On February 17, 1937, 12 men stood on a wooden platform beneath the Golden Gate Bridge, 220 feet above the freezing Pacific Ocean. They were removing scaffolding, just 3 months away from finishing what many called the bridge that couldn't be built. Below them hung a safety net that had already saved 19 lives. The men who fell into that net and survived called themselves the Halfway to Hell Club. But on this gray February morning, the net would fail, the platform would collapse, and 10 men would fall not halfway to hell, but all the way to their deaths. The story of the Golden Gate Bridge is told as a triumph of American engineering, and it is, but it's also a story of calculated risks, of men who knew they might die, and of a tragedy that was deliberately downplayed so that nothing would tarnish the bridge's grand opening just 3 months later. The families of those 10 men attended memorial services while the rest of the nation prepared for the biggest celebration San Francisco had ever seen. This is the story of the Golden Gate Bridge, not the version you learned in school, not the one in the tourist brochures. This is the story of the men who fell halfway to hell and lived to tell about it, and the story of the men who fell all the way, whose deaths were nearly forgotten in the rush to open America's most iconic bridge. Welcome to Hidden America. This is the untold story of the Golden Gate Bridge.
The idea of spanning the Golden Gate, the mile-wide strait connecting San Francisco Bay to the Pacific Ocean, seemed impossible for decades. The water was deep, often exceeding 300 feet. Powerful currents rushed through the strait at speeds of up to 7 miles per hour. Thick fog rolled in most mornings, reducing visibility to nearly zero, and wind gusts could exceed 70 miles per hour. Engineers said it couldn't be done. The costs would be astronomical. The risks were too great. But Joseph Strauss didn't listen to the engineers who said it was impossible. In 1917, Strauss, a Chicago bridge designer, proposed a hybrid cantilever suspension bridge across the Golden Gate. His initial design was clunky and impractical, but it started a conversation. Over the next 16 years, Strauss refined his vision with the help of consulting architects and engineers who transformed his utilitarian concept into something extraordinary. The real genius behind the bridge's elegant design was consulting engineer Charles Alton Ellis and architect Irving Morrow. Ellis performed complex mathematical calculations that proved the suspension bridge could withstand the forces acting on it. Morrow designed the Art Deco elements and chose the distinctive international orange color that would make the bridge instantly recognizable. But Strauss, as chief engineer, would take most of the credit. Funding was the next obstacle. The estimated cost was $35 million during the Great Depression. But in 1930, voters in 6 counties approved bond measures to finance construction. Banks were hesitant to purchase the bonds until A.P. Giannini founder of Bank of America, agreed to buy the entire issue. Without Giannini's faith in the project, the Golden Gate Bridge might never have been built. Construction officially began on January 5, 1933. The unemployment rate was 25%. Men were desperate for work. Thousands applied for positions on the bridge. Only the lucky few were hired. They knew the work was dangerous. They knew men would die. But they also knew they were building something historic. Something that would outlast them all.
Building the Golden Gate Bridge required innovations that had never been attempted in bridge construction. The South Tower had to be built in open water, 65 feet below the surface, in an area subjected to powerful tides and currents. Engineers designed a massive fender, an oval-shaped barrier that extended 20 feet above the water and 30 feet below, protecting the construction site from ships and currents. Building the fender alone took a year and consumed 23 million pounds of steel. Inside the fender, workers used dynamite to blast away the seafloor, then poured concrete for the tower foundation. The work was cold, wet, and incredibly dangerous. Divers worked in near-zero visibility, guiding equipment by feel. On the surface, men operated cranes and positioned massive concrete buckets. One slip, one miscalculation, and men would be crushed or drowned. Joseph Strauss understood the dangers. Unlike most construction bosses of the era, he implemented unprecedented safety measures. Workers were required to wear hard hats, the first time this had been mandated on a bridge project. They wore special glare-free goggles to protect against the sun reflecting off the water. In enclosed spaces, they wore respirators to protect against toxic fumes from lead-based paint and red-hot rivets. But Strauss's most famous innovation was the safety net. A massive net made of manila rope with 6-inch squares stretched beneath the entire construction zone. The net cost $130,000, an enormous sum during the Depression. Many questioned whether it was necessary. Strauss insisted. He believed that if workers knew a net would catch them, they would work with more confidence and make fewer mistakes. The net was installed in late 1936. Almost immediately, it began saving lives. In October 1936, ironworker Al Zampa lost his footing and fell from the bridge deck. He plummeted 40 feet before hitting the net. The net held. Zampa survived with minor injuries. He became the first member of what would be known as the Halfway to Hell Club. The name came from bridge worker superstition. When a man fell to his death from a bridge, workers said he had gone to hell. So, a man who fell and survived had only gone halfway to hell. It was gallows humor, the kind of joke men make when they work in constant proximity to death. Over the following months, 18 more men fell into the net and survived.
They formed an informal club, meeting in St. Luke's Hospital, where many recovered from their injuries. Not all who fell walked away unscathed. 4 suffered serious injuries, broken bones, internal trauma. But they were alive. The net was hailed as a triumph of safety engineering. Joseph Strauss was praised for his foresight and compassion. But the net had limits. It was designed to catch individual workers who lost their footing. It was never designed to catch a massive scaffold carrying multiple men and tons of equipment. By February 1937, the Golden Gate Bridge was nearly complete. The 2 towers stood 746 feet tall, the tallest bridge towers in the world. The main suspension cables, each 3 feet in diameter and containing 27,572 wires, had been strung. The roadway deck was being installed section by section. The bridge was scheduled to open in May. Just 3 more months. But there was a problem. A wooden scaffolding platform, 40 feet wide and weighing several tons, hung beneath the bridge near the Marin Tower. It had been used during deck construction and now needed to be dismantled and removed. The platform was attached to the bridge with support beams and cables. Workers would need to cut away these supports while standing on the platform itself. On February 17th, a crew of 12 men began the dangerous work. The morning was cold and foggy, typical San Francisco weather. Visibility was poor. The platform swayed in the wind. Somber. The men knew this was one of the most dangerous jobs on the entire project. They moved carefully, cutting support beams one at a time, ensuring the platform remained stable. But something went wrong. At approximately 10:30 in the morning, without warning, the entire platform tore away from the bridge. 12 men, along with tons of wood and steel, plunged toward the safety net below. The net, designed to catch individual falling workers, couldn't withstand the massive weight. The platform tore through the net like paper. The manila rope, stretched and weakened by months of exposure to salt air and moisture, snapped. The platform, the scaffolding, and 12 men fell 220 feet into the frigid Pacific Ocean. Witnesses on nearby boats described hearing the crack of breaking ropes, then a massive splash. The water churned with debris, rope, wood, and bodies. Fishing boats rushed to the scene. They pulled 3 men from the water alive. One, a worker named Slim Lambert, described being dragged underwater by the sinking net, his legs tangled in the rope. His ears bled from the pressure as he was pulled deeper. He managed to free himself and swim to the surface, but he would never forget the feeling of being dragged toward the bottom. Lambert survived. Oscar Olsberg survived. But the 3rd man pulled from the water died before reaching shore. The other 9 men were never found. Their bodies were lost in the powerful currents of the Golden Gate, swept out to sea or dragged deep below the surface, entangled in the wreckage of the scaffold and the net that was supposed to save them. 10 men dead in a single accident. The worst disaster in the bridge's construction. Here's what most people don't know. In the weeks before the accident, workers had reported concerns about the scaffolding. The support beams showed signs of stress. The attachment points were corroded by salt spray. Several workers told supervisors they believed the platform was unsafe. But the bridge was behind schedule. The opening date had been announced. Tourist officials, politicians, and civic leaders were planning the biggest celebration in San Francisco history. Stopping work to reinforce the scaffolding would cause delays. So the work continued. After the accident, an investigation was conducted. The official conclusion was that the platform failed due to unexpected lateral stress caused by wind. No blame was assigned. No one was held responsible. The investigation report was brief, almost perfunctory. It raised more questions than it answered. Why had the platform been allowed to remain in place for so long? Why weren't additional safety measures implemented given the known risks? Why did the net fail so catastrophically? These questions were never fully answered. The investigation was concluded quickly. The findings were announced, and then the story disappeared from newspapers. There were rumors that Joseph Strauss personally intervened to limit the investigation, fearing that prolonged scrutiny would delay the opening or damage his reputation. Those rumors were never confirmed, but the speed with which the tragedy was moved out of public view is striking.
Construction continued. Workers returned to the bridge the next day. Some refused. They quit and never came back. But most returned. They needed the money. They wanted to finish what they'd started. And they believed the men who died would have wanted the bridge completed. On April 19, 1937, just 2 months after the disaster, the last rivet was driven. The bridge was complete. Preparations began for the opening celebration. On May 27th, Pedestrian Day, the bridge opened for foot traffic. Over 200,000 people walked across the bridge, each paying 25 cents for the privilege. They marveled at the views, the engineering, the beauty of the structure. Few thought about the 11 men who died building it. The next day, May 28th, President Franklin Roosevelt pressed a telegraph key in the White House. The signal traveled 3,000 miles to San Francisco, and the Golden Gate Bridge officially opened for vehicular traffic. Celebrations went on for days. Parades, fireworks, speeches praising American ingenuity and determination. Joseph Strauss gave a speech at the dedication ceremony. He spoke about the challenges overcome, the innovations implemented, the triumph of human will. He mentioned the workers who died, but he didn't dwell on it. The speech focused on the future, not the past, on achievement, not sacrifice. The families of the 10 men who died in February were invited to the ceremony. Some attended. They watched as politicians and celebrities celebrated. They listened to speeches about progress and greatness. And they went home to empty houses, to lives forever changed by a bridge that the world called a masterpiece. Today, the Golden Gate Bridge stands as one of the most recognizable structures in the world. Nearly 2 billion vehicles have crossed it since 1937. It's been featured in countless films, photographs, and artworks. Engineers study its design. Tourists flock to see it. It is, by any measure, an extraordinary achievement. But the story of the Halfway to Hell Club is rarely told. The 19 men who fell into the net and survived have mostly been forgotten. Al Zempa, the first member of the club, lived to age 95 and became the unofficial spokesman for the group. He spent decades trying to track down the other members to preserve their stories. He had limited success. Many disappeared into obscurity. Some didn't want to be reminded of their brush with death. The 10 men who died when the scaffold collapsed are commemorated on a plaque near the bridge. Their names are listed, but most visitors never see it. They're too busy taking selfies with the bridge in the background, too focused on the beauty of the structure to think about the men entombed in the concrete foundations or lost in the waters below. The safety net, the innovation that saved 19 lives, is mentioned in the bridge's official history. But the catastrophic failure that killed 10 is often downplayed or omitted entirely. It doesn't fit the narrative of triumph and progress. It reminds us that great achievements often come with hidden costs, that the structures we celebrate were built with human sacrifice. Modern bridge construction has learned from the Golden Gate's lessons. Safety standards are stricter. Nets are stronger. Workers have more protections. But men still die building bridges. Construction remains one of the most dangerous professions in America. The bridge still demands its due. There's one more mystery. In 1963, a businessman named Eric Pedley tried to reunite the Halfway to Hell Club for the bridge's 25th anniversary. He tracked down Al Zampa, but couldn't locate any of the other 18 members. Where did they go? Why did they disappear? Some may have died in the intervening years. Others may have simply wanted to forget. But it's strange that 18 men who shared such a remarkable experience vanished so completely from history. The Golden Gate Bridge is a masterpiece. It's also a monument to risk, sacrifice, and the choices we make when ambition collides with safety. 19 men fell halfway to hell and lived to tell about it. 10 men fell all the way and were almost forgotten. Joseph Strauss died just 1 year after the bridge opened, at age 68. Some said the stress of the project killed him. Others said he never recovered from the guilt of the February disaster. We'll never know, but in his final months, he wrote a poem about the bridge. It's inscribed on a statue near the structure. The poem celebrates the bridge's beauty and permanence. It doesn't mention the men who died building it. The bodies of the 9 men lost in the February 17th disaster were never recovered. They're still out there somewhere in the waters of the Golden Gate,
or buried in sediment on the ocean floor. The 10th man, pulled from the water alive but dying, was buried in a San Francisco cemetery. His grave marker mentions that he helped build the bridge. It doesn't mention how he died. Next time on Hidden America, we'll explore another iconic structure with a dark secret. We'll head to New York City and descend into the underwater caissons of the Brooklyn Bridge, where dozens of workers suffered from a mysterious illness called the bends, and where some never resurfaced at all. What happened in those pressurized chambers beneath the East River? And why did the chief engineer try to hide the true death toll? If you want to uncover more hidden stories of American infrastructure, subscribe to this channel. The bridges we cross, the dams that power our cities, the tunnels that connect our communities, they all have stories we've been taught to forget. But the truth is still there, waiting beneath the surface. Until next time, remember that every bridge you cross was built by human hands, and some of those hands never made it home.